Hello, my friends. Today I want to start with a very simple question, and I want you to think about this question honestly, not just with your mind, but with your whole experience as an English learner. Here is the question. Have you ever sat in an English class, studied grammar for months, memorized hundreds of vocabulary words, passed your exams with good marks, and then one day a real English speaker talked to you at normal speed and you understood almost nothing? If that has happened to you, if you have felt that terrible gap between what you studied and what you could actually understand in real life, then today I am speaking directly to you. Because today I want to talk about something so simple that most people underestimate it completely. I want to talk about 10 minutes. Just 10 minutes every single day. 10 minutes of listening to English. And I want to show you how those 10 minutes, done consistently, done correctly, done with intention, can transform your English in ways that years of traditional studying never could. So stay with me, because what I am going to share with you today is not complicated. It is not expensive. It does not require special equipment or a special teacher or a special place. It just requires 10 minutes and the decision to show up every single day. Let me begin by telling you something about how language actually enters the human brain, because understanding this will change everything about how you approach your English learning. When a child is born, they come into the world with no language at all, no words, no grammar, no understanding of any human language. And yet, within just a few years, that same child is speaking their native language with remarkable fluency. They are using complex sentences. They are expressing subtle emotions. They are making jokes. They are asking deep questions. They are communicating as fully functioning human beings. How does this happen? How does a child go from no language to complete fluency without a single grammar lesson, without a single vocabulary list, without a single exam? The answer is listening. Before a child speaks a single word, they have spent months listening. They have heard their language thousands and thousands of times, in different voices, in different situations, in different emotional contexts. They have heard it while being fed, while being held, while playing, while being comforted, while being excited. They have heard it so many times, in so many different situations, that their brain has built a deep, rich, multidimensional understanding of how the language sounds, how it flows, what it means, and how it feels. And only after all of that listening, only after all of that input, does speaking begin to emerge. Naturally, effortlessly, almost automatically. This is the process. And when we learn a second language, the same process applies. Input first, listening first, understanding first. And then, from that deep foundation of listening, speaking, and everything else grows. Now, I want to tell you something that most traditional English courses get completely backwards. Most courses spend most of their time on output before input is ready. They want you to speak before you have truly heard enough. They want you to write before you have truly absorbed enough. They push production before the foundation of reception is solid. And this is why so many English learners can pass grammar tests but cannot understand a real conversation, because they were trained to produce language without first being trained to receive it, without first filling their ears and their brain with real, natural, living English. Listening is not a passive activity that you do while waiting for the real learning to start. Listening is where real learning begins. Listening is the foundation of everything. And 10 minutes of genuine, focused listening every single day will build that foundation faster and more deeply than almost anything else you can do. Let me tell you about a young woman. Her name is Nadia. Nadia was 23 years old, and she had been studying English since she was 10 years old. 13 years of English education. She could name every tense in the English language. She could explain the difference between the present perfect and the simple past. She knew hundreds of phrasal verbs. She had read English textbooks and taken English exams and received passing grades throughout her entire school life. But when she watched an American television show without subtitles, she understood perhaps 30% of what was said. When she listened to a natural English conversation between two friends, she felt completely lost. The words came too fast. The speakers swallowed sounds and connected words in ways she had never heard in class. People used expressions she had never encountered in any textbook. And the gap between what she knew in theory and what she could understand in practice was enormous and deeply discouraging. Nadia did not give up, but she changed her approach completely. Instead of studying more grammar, instead of memorizing more vocabulary, she made one simple commitment. Every single morning, before she did anything else, before she checked her phone, before she made her coffee, she sat quietly for 10 minutes and she listened to English. Just listened. She did not try to understand every word. She did not stop to look things up. She just listened. Every morning, 10 minutes, for 30 days. And at the end of those 30 days, something had shifted. Not dramatically, not completely, but noticeably, clearly, meaningfully. The sounds of English had started to feel familiar in a new way. Not familiar like something she had studied, familiar like something she had lived with, like a neighbor's voice you recognize immediately, even before you see their face. The rhythm of English had entered her body, and from that rhythm, understanding began to grow. Now, I want to explain to you exactly what happens in your brain and your ears during those 10 minutes of daily listening. Because understanding the mechanism helps you trust the process even when progress feels slow. When you listen to English regularly, several things happen simultaneously. First, your brain begins to recognize the sound patterns of English. Every language has its own unique set of sounds, its own rhythm, its own melody. And your brain, which was built for your native language, has been trained from birth to recognize the patterns of that language. When you start listening to English regularly, your brain begins to retrain itself. It begins to recognize English sound patterns alongside the patterns of your native language. This process is called phonological adaptation, and it takes time. But 10 minutes every day gives your brain the regular exposure it needs to make this adaptation. Second, your brain begins to segment the continuous stream of sound that is spoken English into individual words and phrases. This is called word segmentation, and it is one of the biggest challenges for language learners. When we speak, we do not pause between every word. We speak in a continuous flow of sound. Words run together. Consonants at the end of one word blend into vowels at the beginning of the next. Some words are shortened or swallowed almost entirely. And for a learner who has only seen English in written form, this continuous flow is almost impossible to decode. But regular listening trains your brain to find the boundaries between words inside that flow, to hear where one word ends and another begins, to recognize familiar combinations of sounds even when they are delivered at natural speed. And this ability, once developed, changes everything about your listening comprehension. Third, and perhaps most importantly, regular listening builds what language researchers call a mental lexicon. This is your brain's internal dictionary. Not the kind of dictionary you look words up in, but a living, dynamic network of words and their meanings, their sounds, their associations, their contexts. When you learn a word from a textbook, it enters your mental lexicon as a visual symbol, a written form with a definition attached. But when you hear a word repeatedly in natural speech, in different contexts, spoken by different voices, it enters your mental lexicon as a sound, as a living thing. And words that live in your mental lexicon as sounds, as things you have heard in real human speech, are words you can recognize instantly when you hear them again. They are the words that do not require a moment of translation. They are just there, immediately available, immediately understood. And building this kind of deep, sound-based word knowledge is what 10 minutes of daily listening does for you, slowly but powerfully, day after day. Now I want to talk to you about what to listen to, because this matters enormously. Not all listening material is created equal, and choosing the right material at the right time can mean the difference between 10 minutes that builds real competence and 10 minutes that leaves you confused and discouraged. Let me give you a clear framework for choosing your listening material based on where you are in your English journey. If you are a beginner or lower intermediate learner, the most important thing is to find material that is spoken clearly, at a slightly slower than natural pace, and on topics that you already understand. This might sound too easy, but it is not too easy. It is exactly right. Because at this stage, your goal is not to challenge yourself with difficult content. Your goal is to build familiarity with English sounds, to let your brain begin to recognize the basic patterns and rhythms of the language. And you can only do this if you are not completely overwhelmed. If you understand the general meaning of what you are hearing, Your brain can focus on the sounds themselves, on how the words feel, on how sentences flow. There are wonderful resources for this level. Podcasts designed specifically for English learners, short news programs in simplified English, children's stories read aloud by clear, careful speakers, educational videos on topics you already know, so you are not trying to understand both new language and new content at the same time. These are your friends at this stage. Use them without embarrassment. Use them with gratitude, because they are giving your brain exactly what it needs. If you are at an intermediate level, you can start to push yourself a little further. You can start to listen to material made for real English audiences, not simplified for learners. But choose material that is clear and well organized. Choose speakers who speak at a moderate pace. Podcasts where people discuss topics you find interesting are excellent at this level. Documentaries on subjects you know well. Short talks by clear, engaging speakers. The news read by professional broadcasters. At this level, you will not understand everything, and that is completely fine. Your goal is not perfect comprehension. Your goal is to spend time with real English, to hear how real English speakers actually sound, to notice the rhythm and melody of authentic speech, and to let your brain begin to adapt to the speed and naturalness of real communication. If you are at an upper intermediate or advanced level, then almost anything can be your listening material. Conversations between native speakers, comedy shows, interviews, lectures, audiobooks, anything that interests you. At this level, the most important thing is not the difficulty of the material, but the consistency of your practice. Because even at an advanced level, 10 minutes of daily listening continues to deepen your comprehension, continues to expose you to new vocabulary and context, continues to sharpen your ear for subtleties of tone and meaning that take years to fully master. Now let me talk about how to listen, because there is a significant difference between passive listening and active listening, and both have their place in your 10-minute daily practice. Passive listening is when you listen to English while doing something else, while cooking, while exercising, while commuting, while cleaning your house. You are not giving your full attention to the listening, but English is flowing into your ears while your body is occupied with something else. And this kind of listening has real value because it increases your total exposure to English. It means that English is present in more parts of your day. It means your brain is hearing English sounds even when you are not consciously focused on learning. And all of that exposure adds up. All of that sound enters your memory in subtle ways. So do not dismiss passive listening as not real practice. It is real practice. It is just one kind of practice. Active listening is different. Active listening is when you give your complete undivided attention to what you are hearing. You sit down, you close other tabs, you put your phone face down, you focus entirely on the English coming into your ears. You try to follow every sentence. You notice when you understand and when you do not. You pay attention not just to the words, but to the rhythm, the stress, the emotion, the way ideas connect. This kind of listening is much more demanding, but it is also much more powerful, because your brain, when fully engaged, learns at a much deeper level than when it is only half paying attention. My recommendation for your 10 minutes is this. Make it active listening. Sit down with intention. Create a small moment of focus in your day. Just 10 minutes of giving English your complete attention. Because 10 minutes of full attention is worth more than an hour of half attention. And 10 minutes is short enough that you can always find it. You can always summon enough focus for 10 minutes. Even on your busiest day. Even on your most tired day. Even on the days when everything feels like too much. 10 minutes you can always do. Let me tell you about a man named Ibrahim. Ibrahim was 35 years old. He was busy, a demanding job, a family, many responsibilities. He had been wanting to improve his English for years, but he always told himself the same thing. I do not have time. I do not have the time to take a class. I do not have the time to sit down and study. I do not have the time for language learning. Life is too full. And he believed this. He genuinely believed it. Until one day a colleague mentioned that she had been improving her English by listening to podcasts during her commute. Just during her commute. Nothing special. Nothing extra. Just using time that already existed in her day. Ibrahim thought about his own commute. 20 minutes each way. 40 minutes a day that he was already spending sitting on a bus, looking at his phone, reading things that did not really matter to him, scrolling without purpose. He made a decision. Starting the next morning, he would use just 10 minutes of that commute to listen to English. Not 40 minutes, not 20 minutes, just 10. And he would do it every single day without exception. He found a podcast for intermediate English learners that discussed topics he found genuinely interesting. And every morning on the bus, he put in his earphones and he listened for 10 minutes. The first week was difficult. He understood maybe 50%. The speakers seemed to move quickly. Some words were unfamiliar. Sometimes he lost the thread of what was being said. But he kept going. He did not stop. He did not decide it was not working. He just kept listening. The second week was similar. But there were moments of clarity that had not been there in the first week. Moments where a sentence landed in his mind completely, without effort. Moments where he understood not just the words, but the feeling behind them. Those moments were small, but they were real, and they kept him going. By the end of the first month, something noticeable had changed. Ibrahim was understanding more. Not everything, but significantly more than when he started. And more importantly, English was starting to feel less foreign, less like a code he was trying to crack, and more like a language he was beginning to know. After 3 months of his 10-minute daily practice, Ibrahim sat next to an English-speaking colleague at a work event and had a real conversation. Not a perfect conversation, not a fluent conversation, but a real one. One where he understood what was being said and could respond with meaning. And he thought about all the years he had told himself he did not have time, all the years he had been wrong, because time had always been there. He just had not used it this way. I want to talk now about something that I think is very important and not discussed enough. The role of repetition in listening practice. Most people, when they listen to something once and do not understand it completely, move on to the next thing. They think, well, I did not understand that. Let me try something different. But this approach misses one of the most powerful learning opportunities available, because listening to the same material multiple times is one of the fastest ways to build comprehension. Think about what happens the first time you listen to something. You are getting a general sense of the content. Your brain is working hard to decode the sounds, to find the words, to follow the meaning. It is working so hard on all of these things simultaneously that it cannot pay deep attention to any single one of them. But the second time you listen to the same material, your brain already knows what is coming. The general meaning is already understood, and so it can focus more deeply. It can pay attention to specific words it missed the first time. It can notice the way the speaker connects ideas. It can absorb the rhythm and melody of specific sentences more completely. And the third time, it goes even deeper. Every time you listen to the same material again, your brain is extracting more information, building more connections, deepening its understanding of the language patterns. This is why I strongly recommend that in your 10 minutes of daily listening, you do not always choose new material. Some days choose something you have already listened to. Listen to it again, and notice how much more you understand the second and third time. Notice how sentences that were unclear before suddenly make perfect sense. Notice how words you could not catch before become clear when you already know the context. This experience of growing comprehension with repeated listening is one of the most encouraging and motivating experiences in language learning, because you can feel yourself improving. You can hear the difference between the first listen and the third listen. And that feeling, that clear, tangible sense of progress, will keep you coming back to your 10 minutes every single day. Now I want to give you something very practical, a specific daily listening routine that you can follow starting tonight. Not a complicated program, not something that requires hours of preparation, just a simple, clear daily practice that fits into any life, any schedule, any situation. For the first 10 days of your practice, I want you to choose just one piece of listening material and listen to it every single day. Yes, the same thing every day for 10 days. I know this sounds repetitive, but trust me, here is what I want you to choose. Find a short piece of English audio between 3 and 5 minutes long, something you find genuinely interesting, something spoken clearly and at a moderate pace. Maybe a short talk on a topic you love, maybe a brief story, maybe a simple explanation of something that fascinates you. Listen to it once on day 1. Do not stop it. Do not rewind. Just listen from beginning to end. Notice how much you understand. Notice where you get confused. Notice which parts flow clearly and which parts are difficult. Then on day 2, listen to it again. Same material. And this time, notice what is different. What did you catch that you missed yesterday? What feels clearer? What is still confusing? Continue this every day for 10 days. By day 10, you will understand almost everything. And more importantly, you will have deeply absorbed the English of that particular piece. The vocabulary, the sentence structures, the rhythm, the way ideas connect. It will be part of you. And that is the goal. For days 11 to 20, start choosing new material every 2 or 3 days. But continue to listen to each piece multiple times before moving on. Listen to something new on day 11. Listen to it again on day 12. Then again on day 13 before moving to something new. This 3-day cycle gives you enough repetition to build deep comprehension while also giving you enough variety to stay engaged and encounter new vocabulary and structures. For days 21 to 30, you can start choosing new material every day if you want. By now, your ear has been trained enough that you will be getting more from a single listen than you did in the beginning. But whenever you encounter something particularly rich and interesting, do not hesitate to go back and listen to it again, because that second and third listen is always valuable, always teaching you something new. After 30 days of this practice, I want you to compare your comprehension to where it was when you started. Find that very first piece you listened to on day 1. Listen to it again and notice the difference. Notice how effortless it feels now. Notice how every word is clear. Notice how you can follow the meaning without effort. And then think about how you have spent these 30 days. 10 minutes each morning. Nothing dramatic, nothing extreme. Just 10 quiet minutes with English. And look what has changed. This is the power of consistency. This is why 10 minutes every day beats 1 hour once a week. Because the brain learns through regular, repeated exposure, not through occasional intense effort. Every single day you listened, your brain received a signal, a reminder, a reinforcement. And over 30 days, those 30 signals built something real, something you can hear, something you can feel, something that will not go away. I want to talk now about something that many English learners do not think about, and that is the importance of listening to different accents and different voices. Because English is spoken by people all over the world, and the English you will encounter in real life will not all sound the same. American English and British English sound very different. Australian English has its own distinct character. South African English, Indian English, Singaporean English, Nigerian English, they all have their own beautiful flavors and rhythms. And if you only ever listen to one accent, you will struggle when you encounter others. So as your listening practice develops, I want to encourage you to intentionally expose yourself to different accents. Not all at once, not in a way that overwhelms you, but gradually. Start with the accent you are most familiar with from your previous English learning. Get comfortable there, build your foundation there, and then slowly begin to explore others. Listen to a British speaker for a week. Notice what is different. Notice which words sound slightly different. Notice the rhythm. Notice the vocabulary that is unique to that variety of English. Then try Australian English. Then try Indian English. Each new accent you expose yourself to makes your ear more flexible, more adaptable, more able to understand the real diversity of English as it is actually spoken in the world. And that flexibility is one of the most valuable language skills you can develop. Let me tell you about something else that listening does for you that goes beyond comprehension. Something that is harder to measure but equally important. Regular listening builds your intuition for English. And what I mean by intuition is that feeling of knowing whether something is right or wrong in English without being able to explain why. When you have listened to a great deal of English, you start to develop an ear for what sounds natural. When you hear a sentence that is grammatically incorrect, something feels wrong. Not because you consciously analyze the grammar, but because it does not sound like the English you have heard. And conversely, when you want to say something, sometimes the right expression simply comes to you. Not because you studied it, but because you heard it. Because it was stored somewhere in your memory from all that listening. And that intuition, that natural feel for the language, is one of the things that separates learners who speak naturally from learners who speak correctly but stiffly. Both may have the same grammar knowledge, but the one who has done more listening has an intuition that the other lacks. And that intuition is worth everything. Now I want to address something that I hear from learners very often when I talk about listening practice. They say, I listen to English all the time. I watch English movies. I listen to English songs. I hear English everywhere. Why is my listening comprehension not improving? And this is a very fair question, because passive exposure to English, simply having English sounds around you without focused attention, does not produce the same results as intentional active listening. It is like the difference between sitting in a room where someone is playing piano and actually practicing piano yourself. Both involve hearing music, but only one involves learning to play. Intentional listening means choosing material at the right level. It means giving your focused attention. It means listening with the goal of understanding. It means sitting with confusion when it comes and staying with it rather than switching off. It means pushing your brain to work rather than letting English wash over you as background noise. So if you have been surrounded by English but not improving, the answer is not more exposure. The answer is better exposure, more intentional exposure, more focused exposure. And that is exactly what your daily 10 minutes provides. 10 minutes where you sit down with purpose and you give English your complete attention. 10 minutes where you are not multitasking, not half listening, not using English as background music. 10 minutes where English is the only thing. And those 10 minutes, focused and consistent, will do more for your listening comprehension than hours of passive background exposure. I want to tell you now about something called narrow listening. This is a technique that some language researchers believe is one of the most effective approaches to building listening comprehension. And it is remarkably simple. Narrow listening means choosing a very specific topic that you find genuinely interesting and then listening to multiple different pieces of content on that same topic. Instead of listening to a wide variety of topics and speakers, you narrow your focus to one area. For example, if you love football, you listen to 10 different podcasts or videos about football, all different speakers, all different styles, but all on the same topic. And here is why this is so powerful. Because when you stay within one topic, the vocabulary repeats. The same words and expressions come up again and again in slightly different contexts. And each repetition deepens your understanding of those words, makes them more automatic, more available, more yours. And because you already understand the topic, because you know football or cooking or technology deeply in your native language, you can focus your attention on the language itself rather than on understanding the content. Your brain is not working to understand two new things at once. It is working on language with the safety net of familiar content underneath. This is a very efficient and very enjoyable way to build listening competence quickly. Let me talk now about the emotional side of listening practice, because this is something that almost nobody talks about, and it is important. When you sit down for your 10 minutes of English listening, you will have good days and difficult days. On good days, comprehension flows easily. You feel like you are improving. You feel capable and confident. On difficult days, even familiar material seems hard. Your brain is tired. The words blur together. You understand less than you did yesterday. And this is completely normal, completely human. Language learning is not a straight line upward. It goes up and it goes sideways, and sometimes it seems to go backward. And on the backward days, the temptation is to feel discouraged, to feel like your practice is not working, to feel like you are never going to get there. I want to tell you something important about those backward days. They are not setbacks. They are part of the process. Your brain on those difficult days is often doing deep consolidation work that is not visible on the surface. It is taking everything you have listened to in recent weeks and organizing it, filing it, building connections between new material and old material, making the learning permanent. And this consolidation process temporarily reduces performance. Just like your muscles are sore and weaker the day after an intense workout, your brain sometimes feels slower and less capable the day after deep learning. But just as muscle soreness is followed by greater strength, cognitive difficulty is followed by greater competence. So on the difficult days, do your 10 minutes anyway. Do not skip because it feels hard. In fact, those are the days when showing up matters most, because continuing when it is hard is how you build the habit. And the habit maintained through both good days and difficult days, is what produces real change over time. Now I want to bring everything together and leave you with something very clear and very actionable. Because I believe that ideas without action are just entertainment. And I want today to be more than entertainment for you. I want today to change something in your life. So let me give you a very simple commitment that I am asking you to make. Tonight, before you sleep, find one piece of English audio that interests you. Something between 3 and 5 minutes. Download it if you can so you can access it without internet. Or bookmark it on your phone. And tomorrow morning, before anything else, before social media, before the news, before your first cup of coffee, sit down in a quiet place for 10 minutes and listen to that piece. Listen with your full attention. Do not try to understand every word. Do not stop and look things up. Just listen. Experience English. Let the sounds enter your ears and your brain and your memory. And then go about your day. And the day after that, do the same thing. 10 minutes, every morning, without exception. Do this for 30 days. Not because I'm asking you to, but because you are asking yourself to. Because you understand now what those 10 minutes will build. You understand the phonological adaptation, the word segmentation, the mental lexicon, the listening intuition. You understand that your brain needs regular, consistent exposure to English sounds to build the internal architecture of comprehension. And you understand that 10 minutes every day is not a small thing. It is exactly the right thing. It is the thing that works. I started riding my bicycle 40 minutes every morning just to hear English spoken naturally. Just to put myself in a place where English was real and alive and human. I did not have podcasts. I did not have the internet. I just had the willingness to show up every morning and put myself in the presence of the language I wanted to learn. And that willingness, that consistent daily showing up, changed everything for me. You have something I did not have. You have 10 minutes of carefully chosen, perfectly leveled, endlessly varied English audio available at your fingertips at any moment of any day. You have resources that I could not have imagined when I was a young boy riding my bicycle in the early morning. Use them. Do not waste them. Do not let them sit unused while you wait to feel ready. You are ready now. 10 minutes is enough. Tonight is soon enough. And tomorrow morning is the perfect time to begin. Because here is the truth that I want to leave you with today. Every great English speaker you have ever admired, every person who seems to flow in English like it is their native language, every person who understands conversations at full speed without effort, every one of them built their comprehension the same way. One listening session at a time. One day at a time. One small, consistent effort that added up over months and years to something extraordinary. That path is not closed to you. It is open. It is waiting. And it starts with 10 minutes tomorrow morning. So do not think about fluency right now. Do not think about perfect pronunciation. Do not think about all the grammar you still need to learn. Think about tomorrow morning. Think about those 10 minutes. Think about sitting quietly with English entering your ears and your brain and your life. That is enough. That is everything. That is where it all begins. Thank you, my friends, for spending this time with me today. I hope what I have shared with you has given you not just knowledge, but a feeling of possibility, a feeling that change is closer than you thought, that fluency is not years away, but 10 minutes away. 10 minutes tomorrow morning. That is your first step. Take it, and I will see you in the next one.